Call the meeting to order. Any additions to the agenda tonight? No? Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented, please? Councillor Longstaff?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Alrighty, get right into the heart of it. 4.1, 2026 operating budget. And thanks for everybody showing up. It's very miserable out there today. I didn't think I was going to make it today. I had to drive.
Yeah, your truck's still running.
Yeah.
We're just like, it's not a weather's night. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Before I begin, I want to maybe take a moment to reflect. It feels it was just like yesterday that I was sitting in this room, the first time that we met, and we had our council orientation. And I can remember some difficult discussions and some confusion and some concern and fear and all kinds of different things that we dealt with on that first day that we had our council orientation. I have to say 5.5 months later, we've done a considerable amount of work. This council's directed us on many things, including transparency, financial accountability, controls, working towards a better financial situation. Probably the most thing that I've heard basically from this council, and I think it's important for tonight because tonight's budget, is I've heard council say many times that you want to make sure that we're connected to the public and that we're here to serve the public. We want to make sure that everything that we do is responsible. And so I like to think that tonight we're going to be presenting something that's difficult for sure, because we had to make some very difficult choices, but at the same time something that's also very responsible and really meets the direction that you gave us in relationship to developing the financial plan to help support this town. So with that, we're going to begin the discussions around the budget, and there's a couple of things. We have a very large package that we gave you. I want to make sure it's very clear for yourselves and again for our public that we will be covering the first document and a PowerPoint. But the rest of it is essentially handoff. It's the first introduction of a lot of detailed information that we want to give you. We're going to be going over that in more detail next week. So tonight is basically, it's just there for information. We have some changes to make in that document. It's being designed and we're updating things, but for the most part, again, we want to make sure it was in your hands and in the public's hands for review and discussion before we finalize the budget next week and hopefully get approval. So with that, I'm going to just begin with our presentation. And again, very much focusing on resetting for resilience, building our future. So from a budget perspective, we are recognizing that we're going to have a challenging year, but also that we need tax increases. Tax increases are required for municipalities all across Alberta at this time of year. There's a number of reasons why we have tax increases. They're for things like growth and inflation. Sometimes there's service changes. Sometimes there's contractual obligations that we have to meet. In the case of Gibbons, I have to say, this is a very, very different situation. Tax increases that we're going to be going over tonight are basically transformational because basically we have, again, a very significant financial situation to overcome. And so we did a lot of work to make sure that we had what we call a taxation or a tax increase that's reasonable, but at the same time, one that sets us up for long-term success through what we call a long-term tax strategy. One of the things, again, because your want was for us to be very, very transparent with the public. One of the things when we started to develop this budget and long-term financial plan, we recognized, again, from our experience and from a lot of research that we did in situations that are similar to Gibbons, is that taxing your way out of a financial dilemma rarely works. And the reason why it rarely works, when I mean taxing your way out, I mean excessive tax increases. It rarely works because people get upset, people leave the community. It causes all kinds of issues for, again, our customers. And so from that perspective, we wanted to make sure that we had a balance. Because of that, we decided not to tax our way out. We decided to have a combination of taxes and significant changes to our cost base. And so we're going to go over those things tonight. So we made some difficult decisions, but this budget does reflect that. So again, we are requesting a tax increase of approximately 5.2%. This is basically $166 annually or $14 a month for the increase for the average residential property. We're also going to be requesting, and again, we'll have this discussion, it's open for debate this evening, but we'd like to have some direction so we can put this into the final document. We're looking for an additional 1 to 4% over and above that 5.2%, and the reason why is that ties to a long-term tax strategy and a long-term financial plan. What we'd be doing with those funds, and again this year and in future years, is looking to replenish our reserves and looking to develop strategies around debt management and debt buy down. So two key streams that we're hoping to begin basically a long-term plan. So the tax increase, the 5.2 is for our base or costs, and the 1 to 4 is basically to support reserve and debt basically management over the long term. Further increases would not represent operational sustainability, but would be focused again on long-term financial planning, and that's what we're looking for the extra increases. And what does this achieve? It gives us a proactive approach to financial capacity. One of the things that we're trying to propose this evening is that with additional increases, and we do have other reserve increases that we're going to be sharing with you this evening, we are looking at a long-term plan that supports us replenishing our reserves, again, getting our debt down into a manageable situation so that the town not only can survive, but actually can flourish. So we are working on reserve policies, we're working on procurement policies, we're working on debt management policies that would turn these funds into something meaningful for this town. And again, those reserves would be very transparent as to what we're planning to use them for. Typical reserves, and probably the most important part is, one of the key things for municipalities is asset management. So we're looking at our capital assets, our roads, our water, our infrastructure, making sure that we can maintain those things, replacing our vehicles, making sure that our facilities are in good shape. This would be the beginning of a long-term plan. I can tell you that very many years ago, I worked for Strathcona County. I was a junior in the budget office at that time. Eventually, I got to the point where I was running the financial planning office in Strathcona County. And I can remember my boss coming in and saying, we have an aging bus fleet, we have an aging rolling stock, so basically our vehicles that help clear the snow. We have issues with our roads, and he said, we need a tax increase probably equivalent to our amortization. And we started that in about 1998, and it took about 15 years. And Strathcona County's amortization now is fully funded. They have an actual operating transfer equivalent to their amortization, and that money goes into replenishment and maintenance of assets each and every year. So this is probably something that we'd be looking at the same kind of situation, a 1 to 5% increase for maybe 10 to 15 years. And if we did that, we'd eventually have what I would call an incredibly sustainable situation. And so we're really looking to get to a good place over the long term. Things don't happen overnight. This is the beginning and not an end. So it's just, again, an incremental increase we're looking that would tie to, again, long-term asset management and again, the financial safety of this municipality. What this does is it reduces long-term risk and ensures municipalities are prepared for, again, future financial needs. Again, it'd be a multi-level strategy. So again, it's about strengthening today, but it's also about looking for tomorrow. And as you're aware, as it stands right now, we have very little financial assets in the bank, but hopefully you'll see by the end of this presentation, we have a plan by the end of this year to have significant financial assets in the bank here soon. So, and Brian, feel free to pitch in anytime that you want. One comment I want to make is that Ryan told me he did tie his own tie tonight, because I very rarely see him in one, so just sort of as aware. This is kind of an exciting moment for me because he wears one maybe twice a year when he works with me. So anyway. So one of the key things, one of the very key things, and it's very important for council to know again in our public, is that 5.2% increase required a significant organizational realignment. And so one of the things that we've done over the last 5 months is I spent time out in the departments, spent time looking at positions, spent time looking at our services, and developed basically something called an organizational design for a municipality of this size that, in my opinion, is the right size and the right type of organizational structure that can serve, that can deliver services and at the same time be cost effective. And so what we're looking here is basically reduce duplication of positions, making sure that we have the right positions and the right people doing the right things, and essentially increase efficiencies. There's something called the 2 E's, which is effectiveness and efficiencies. And we're looking at making sure that our current organizational structure certainly serves both of those purposes. This did impact an estimated 14 positions. And again, this was difficult and it took some time. One of the things that I appreciate, and I think it's very important again for the public to be aware of, is that very early on, I asked council for time when it came to basically looking at the organization and making these decisions, because you don't want to take these decisions or make them lightly. And I can tell you and share with our public that we did not. This was a very, very hard time for us, and it was hard decisions, but again, we believe truly that we made the right ones. One of the key things I think is very important to note about the 14 positions is that on the most part, I believe 7 or 8 of the positions, possibly 9, all are positions that were created within the last 3 years. So this is very important to note, because one of the key things when we look at position loss like this, people think that there's a significant change in service levels. My opinion is that it's not going to be a significant change in service levels. It's going to be right sizing to the types of services that we should be providing. And though there are going to be some changes in service levels, I do believe, and I have to say it, is that there was an issue with the way that we were resourced. And again, many of the positions that were added in the last 2 to 3 years, in my opinion, were possibly not required. And so, though there were some difficult decisions, there's no doubt that this impacted some longer-term staff. On the most part, these were positions that were fairly recently hired, and so very important to know. The impact of these 14 positions results in an annual savings of approximately $1.2 million, and this is prorated right now within the 2026 budget. So very important to note that, again, because we've done this basically in June, July, it doesn't necessarily mean that 1.2 million is going to be saved in 2026. About 50%, 60% of that amount will be saved, though some of these were vacant for 2026, but that will fully be realized in 2027, which is very important in our long-term financial plan. Additional savings that we looked at were basically restructuring and cost savings, and so Ryan, to my right, did a fantastic job of analyzing very strongly basically our current cost structures, long-term actuals in terms of history, the needs, and he made a number of adjustments that I reviewed with him. But in the end, we were able to save nearly $1 million in costs in the operating budget. And we feel that though there will be service level changes, we don't feel truly that there's anything what I call a catastrophic change in services. We've got to do less. We have to probably work a little bit harder. There are certain things that are going to be different. But on the most part, we feel, again, that this is a right sizing of our service levels to our costs. And again, Ryan's got extensive experience doing this. Ryan's been working with Loom for quite some time now, and does budgets for 4 or 5 municipalities or something like that. And so he has quite a lot of skill in this regard. And so we feel very confident that these costs are accurate. We feel very confident that with strong management, we'll be able to manage and deliver services in a very effective way still. And I think that's very important to note. These reductions demonstrate, again, a clear commitment to responsible financial stewardship. And I will say this, this is also going to be a commitment to better accountability. We are working right now on a better reporting structure and an approach to reporting that will be coming back to council. So it's not just about setting a budget, it's about managing a budget and then being held accountable for that budget from your council. So as you've seen before and we've talked about, is you see a check run every couple of weeks, and we don't necessarily agree with that from an accountability perspective because it doesn't really speak to what we're doing out in the field. But soon we're going to be bringing forward a reporting structure and model that'll be very transparent to our public, but one that will also tie to our ability to manage these costs. And what I mean by that as well is that as the CEO, one of the key things that I do is I look at basically our costs every 2 weeks or at least once a month, and I make decisions as to whether we should spend or not. So just because we have the budget dollars doesn't necessarily mean that we spend it. We have to manage it on an ongoing basis. And so we're looking at significantly increasing our ability as an organization, not just in terms of financial stewardship from a budget perspective, but also in terms of how we manage and make decisions in terms of actually operating the organization as well. And Ryan, I don't know if you want to speak to any more of this because you did a lot of work in here, but do you have any more comments on some of the information here?
Not a ton to add to that outside of what Tim said. The big thing with this was, like Tim mentioned, it's reductions, but it's not eliminations for the most part. We're trying to do the same amount with less, basically, is what it comes down to. So the more we're able to do, there will be some changes for sure, and we'll hopefully be able to reintroduce some things over time, bring things back up to a level where we want to see some increases. But for right now, for this year, it was about making it work, basically.
And I think to Ryan's point, one of the key things, again, just to echo this, is being a great CEO and a great operational type of individual. You often see me in a suit in council meetings, but one of the favorite days I have, and Ryan will remember this because he worked with me in other municipalities, I love coming to work sometimes in my steel toe boots and getting out there with the team and asking them what they're doing and how things are going. That's a big change that we are going to be implementing in the long term going forward. We are hoping to have this office linked very much to our public works crew, to our recreation crew, to our SSS crew, so that we have a strong awareness of what's going on in the field, but also helping manage, supervise, and supporting the teams in basically their efficiency and effectiveness in the way they do work. And so we're looking at implementing performance management, we're looking at implementing performance appraisals, we're looking at providing supervisory training and leadership training. So becoming a very different organization than we were previously. So important to note. This, of course, from a budget perspective, we are looking at being very conservative and providing a very disciplined approach to finances. And so very important to note that in this budget, we do have development-related revenues. And this is something that's very important. One of the things that has been challenging for this municipality is it has put a lot of money into the ground from what we call an offsite levy perspective. And what that means is we've built roads, we've put in the ground water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, but the reality of the way the development game works is that you don't get that money back until developers actually develop. And I will say this municipality had challenges from that perspective because of a lack, in my opinion, of understanding how basically the development business works and how it works with municipalities in terms of disciplined development agreements, law, and basically legislation in terms of our ability to receive funds back. And so we are now working very hard on negotiating these types of agreements with developers, looking at our offsite levy bylaw, and I'm very happy to say that at this time, we are looking at significant development dollars coming in over the next year and a couple of years that are basically recouping some of the costs that we put in the ground. And so, again, one of the keys here, though, is that we took a conservative approach, meaning that, unlike in past budgets, whatever's been budgeted for development charges coming in has also been offset with a transfer to reserves. So if they do not materialize, then we simply won't make the transfer to reserves, so the base cost of the municipality is not at risk in any way, shape, or form. And so it's a very, very conservative and prudent approach to development charges and revenues. The base reserve transfers is approximately $1 million, and this is very important to note. When we started this, had basically a significant budget deficit and a spending deficit and serious issues in many avenues in the way that we approached the finances. But what we have now is what we call a base that is balanced, again with a 5.2% tax increase, But with that, we also have up to $1 million being transferred to reserve by the end of 2026. We also have potential, because of the development revenues that I'd spoken to, upwards of over $2 million in addition to that also being transferred to reserves. So we could possibly be, by the end of this year, go from 0 to upwards of $3 million transferred to reserve by the end of the year. And again, the $1 million is conservative, the $3 million is optimistic. But again, there is no risk in the way that we've approached this. And so if we can achieve this by the end of the year, this is a very good news story for the town of Gibbons and a very, very strong turnaround in terms of where we are from a financial perspective. Again, the reserve transfers have been included as offsets for one-time revenue activities, so no risk here. Again, they are aligned with long-term financial planning, and what I mean by that, I mentioned before, we are looking at developing reserve policies and debt management policies. Those are the two really big things we want to get completed, so that if we have money transferred to reserve, then at year end we would come to council and to the public and make recommendations for those reserves from either a debt buy down perspective and or what reserves do we want to put this money in from an asset management perspective. And so not just banking the money, but putting it to good use and getting us in a situation of financial recovery. I have to say, our approach, again, with our tax increases and our recommended possible additional tax increases for long-term financial planning is critical to us being able to rebuild our financial capacity to support our debt reduction and again strengthen our long-term financial sustainability. Obviously, we can no longer continue on the path that we're on. There's been some questions about this, but I will say it was absolutely 100% accurate that we were literally 2 to 3 weeks out from not being able to meet our obligations because we were out of money. And we have since stabilized that significantly, resulted in basically right now a reasonable cash flow position. And hopefully, if you pass this budget with the recommendations we're going to be making, possibly in a situation of surplus funds within the bank. And so that's a pretty big turnaround. And so I think that goes a long way in echoing the leadership and the work that council's directed us to complete. The capital budget, again, I will say this, is focused and disciplined. And what we mean by disciplined is incredibly conservative. And when we say incredibly conservative, it's essentially because we really don't have any funds to spend on capital at this time. We are at the maximum of our debt capacity, and when I say maximum, pretty close to maximum. And we have little to no reserves in the bank that could be used for capital, and nor would we be in a position to do so anyway, because again, we want to have some money in the bank for risk that could be a concern. So I wouldn't be recommending putting money in as we stand today spent upon the capital budget from our reserves. So right now we have a few projects: a skid steer buyback program, a water reservoir upgrade, and again, water is pretty important, so this has been deemed by our engineer as a must-do. And happy to say we're buying a vac truck. So we have looked at a number of options, which included having a contractor come pick it up without us leasing the vac truck and or buying the vac truck, and this has been by far the cheapest option that we have. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this would take us from spending $15,000 a month on a lease to $3,500 a month in terms of debt charges, and we will own the truck. Any additional comments?
So we're still exploring the options right now. That is one of the numbers, and of course Tim honed in on it because it was the smallest number. I conservatively said under 5,000 because it depends on what we get for options. But the current lease cost is $11,500 a month. The goal is to get it down under 5,000 a month.
So yes, we're buying a vac truck, so just waiting for cheers. I guess not. Just kidding. So focus funding, skid steer buyback program. Again, reservoir upgrades important. Vac truck, obviously a big change there. And again, the debt funding that we have is operational in nature. And again, and typically debt servicing comes from the operating budget, as it always does. And so any debt that we take out has to be funded from something, and so it has to be funded from our operating budget. So moving along. So It is important to note, and again, we'll speak more about this next week. Again, because the larger document was basically handoff, and if you read through that, there's a lot of references to service level adjustments that we've made. But this budget certainly is a transitional budget and transformative in that there are going to be services and service reductions. Again, the services that we have in here align with our funding realities. And again, some of these things were unavoidable. We just don't have the money to continue in the way that we were moving forward. But that said, it was very important to note that we did listen very, very much to council. We went through the surveys that came from our public, and we worked very hard to ensure that this budget did not hit services that we would consider essential. So things like snow clearing, fire services, certain maintenance of our assets, to an extent even things like FCSS and the arena. There's certain aspects of it that are considered pretty important to this community. We made sure that we were able to maintain those services at a reasonable or, again, the same level that we have today. But there are things that are going to be affected, and there's no doubt about that. But we are going to, as I mentioned before, strive very hard to use operating efficiencies and effectiveness, training, set goals and have higher expectations in relationship to basically how we work to maintain services and, in my opinion, maybe even improve in certain areas. So again, we are looking at, better performance management to do this, and really looking at making sure that we improve over time. And so sometimes municipalities, I've been working in them for 30 plus years, sometimes we get complacent. And I'm not saying that was the case here, but we believe that there are definitely opportunities for us to get better, and that is our plan together. One of the things I'd like to say to this council is that we did make some very difficult decisions over the last couple of weeks, as you're aware. But I want to say that the Public Works team, the FCSS team, the rec team, the admin team that works in this office are good people. And in the meetings I've had over the last couple of weeks with them, they're very thankful for being here. They're very excited about the new world and the opportunity to learn. And they told me that they want to see this town succeed. And so I believe we're going to have a culture shift that is going to be one that is focused on high service level delivery, but at the same time very caring in relationship to the taxpayer dollar and how we work for our residents. And so we're hoping for a shift here and a big change in the way that we operate. Did I miss a slide? Okay. So one of the key things that is really, really critical, thanks Ryan, getting me out of trouble again, as he normally does. One of the things that's really important is that there's two elements of finance that need to be discussed when we pass a budget. And I'll say this, for the town of Gibbons, this is probably more important than it is for many municipalities. Again, I've done these for a long time, and sometimes when we complete the 3-year plan in a budget, it's kind of a redundant piece of work that we just kind of forecast out because we're more focused on today than we are on tomorrow. That's not something we can do for Gibbons because of the current situation, and so we put in a lot of extra time in looking at, well, what do we need to do to get this town into good shape, not just today, but tomorrow. And so we've actively been working on a long-term financial plan. We've been looking at development of policy for reserves, as I mentioned. We've been looking at how can we strengthen our liquidity and reduce our long-term financial risk. And so the elements that we've presented already, having a reasonable tax increase, replenishing reserves, developing agreements with developers that make sense and put us into a situation of less risk, are all measures to ensure that this town starts seeing money get put in the bank and we have enough money to operate on a daily basis. And so getting our heads, for lack of a better way, putting it above water. So again, we have recognized though that there are some risks going forward. And risks are things like we have deferrals of debenture costs that we've negotiated with the province. Those eventually will come back on, so we have to plan for that. We have risk in that we're very, very thin from a current reserve perspective, and so though we have optimism around this, we have to recognize that we need to manage our funds on an ongoing basis. It's not as much as just passing a budget. We have to keep our belts tightened, and we have to manage costs on a monthly basis and make decisions. And then finally, We have to consider how we approach debt going forward. I mean, debt is a necessary thing for municipalities, but we're not in a good position to take out debt, and that's not a good thing. And so we have to develop plans to buy down debt as fast as we can, replenish our debt capacity, and prepare ourselves so that we're ready for tomorrow. And so again, very much looking at the long term as we develop this budget. Again, our 3-year financial outlook is consistent, and measured tax increases are going to be considered for future obligations coming online. So I will say this to council and to our residents, that the 5.2% and then the additional percentages that we're looking at for reserves will probably be back next year and the year after and the year after that. And again, here's the thing, I want to make sure it's very clear. This is no different than any other municipality across Alberta. We have other clients where actually the tax increases that are being proposed are just as high or maybe even higher than the ones that we're proposing right now for Gibbons. It's not abnormal to see 7, 8, 9, and I think there's one that we did, was it 11 this year? 11% tax dollar increase. So we feel that this tax increase is not just reasonable, it's I think very acceptable considering the situation we were in when we started, which was a 70% tax dollar shortfall. So very important to consider, again, that long term. The approach ensures our future financial shocks will be less. Again, we're hoping for what's called tax smoothing. We don't want to see the ups and downs. That's difficult on residents. And again, we want to maintain this for long term. And as stated before, this is really about a few things. Long-term financial plans means putting money in the bank. So that's reserve rebuilding. It means managing our debt. And it means basically looking at sustainable financial governance. And from that perspective, we are looking at basically reintroducing and analyzing and bringing forward a better procurement policy. And what that means is basically making sure that we spend the money correctly, that there's certain authorities that we have to go through to be able to spend, and the accountability is at the right place, which means it's in this room. So council makes decisions, not administration, when it comes to spending. And so we're going to be looking at those things to support our long-term financial plan. Anything else? Nope. One. Okay. So, as mentioned, this is, in our opinion, a transformation-focused budget. So it's not just simply cost reductions, it's going to move us to being more accountable, more transparent. Hopefully the public could agree. We've already been, I think, far more transparent than what had happened before. And we're going to be very focused on performance and basically, results. So not just passing budgets or passing plans, but actually making things happen, and we're already doing that. This is going to be supported by stronger policies over the coming weeks and months. We're, again, hoping to bring 3 key policies forward. Our procurement policy, our debt management policy, and our reserve policies to support our long-term financial plans. And so again, we're not just saying it, we're working on it now. And by doing these things, again, this is going to protect the future of the town by restoring our discipline, by aligning our services with sustainable funding, by rebuilding our reserves, by reducing our risks, and again, strengthening our governance and accountability by being transparent and again, getting the decisions to the right place. Again, one of the big things, and thanks for doing this, I talked with Ryan about this last night, I wanted to have it in bold, is I think this is the most important word for this evening when building this budget. We want to rebuild basically trust. Trust with our public, trust with yourselves, trust with our partners, whoever it might be. And that means that we have to be transparent. We have to, we as your team have to come forward with good information and do our homework. And again, we have to make an effort to engage often. And so through council meetings, through open houses, through surveys, wherever it might be. So making a really big effort to regain trust of this public, I think, is probably the most important part of the underlying of this budget in the long term and in the short term. So looking forward again, we want to continue our discipline, strong leadership, and a commitment to direction. I think we've done that. Again, very difficult decisions being made over the last 5.5 months. So I think we're not just saying it, we're proving it, so taking action. We want to make sure that we move forward with a credible plan. This plan, I believe, is incredibly strong. It is founded in data. It's founded in integrity and again, very transparent. The math works. I guarantee you that. The budget demonstrates, again, decisive action, responsible governance, and again, it's really about change. We need change, and this budget certainly achieves that. Again, we're no longer going to be reacting to financial challenges. This is a plan and a budget that actually takes basically the reins, or how would I say it, the bull by the horns, whatever you want to call it. And so we're actually not just reacting to things as they come. We're planning ahead through good spending controls, organizational design, tax increases, spending discipline, again, accountability policy. Just there's many things that we're doing in conjunction to make sure that we are basically being proactive in our approach. I can say this, working in this business as long as I have, we have, well over 100 education clients. We have, multiple clients we do budgets for, and we're COs, I think, in 3 or 4 municipalities. The key thing I will say in municipalities that I've seen succeed, plan ahead. They plan ahead strategically. They have discipline. Success doesn't happen by accident. And I can guarantee you in the next 20 to 30 years, there's going to be municipalities, as things get more difficult, that will fail. And I hope that, and in fact, I'll say it's going to be more than a hope, I know that Gibbons isn't going to be one of them, because we're starting something different today in terms of our approach. And so, very important that we take proactive action, and again, build a sustainable and resilient future for yourselves and for the residents that live here. So with that, I'm going to stop and ask, are there any questions before Ryan gets into the revisions? Councillor Brack.
Councillor Brack? Councillor Brack?
I guess I've got 2 questions. One is, if we say that there's going to be a service decrease, do you have any examples of what type of a decrease that I guess that our average citizen is going to notice off the bat?
Absolutely. Now, one thing to be clear, we're going to be much more detailed next week in terms of service decreases to pass the budget. But to give you some examples, we have, for example, cut down wages in the gymnasiums. We're probably looking at maybe having hours shut down a little bit, like less hours for the fitness center. We're shutting the arena down in the summertime, so the ice is out and it's not going back in. So it's not going to go back into the fall. Usually it's in for at least 8 more weeks or 9 more weeks during the year. So that's going to be a service decrease. We have reduced contracted services and things like line painting, certain maintenance of certain infrastructures. Again, we're hoping to use internal staff to hopefully increase our abilities in those regards, but those are the types of things that will be changed. There's a few examples. So recreation, FCSS is another one. Certain programs are going to be removed. And one question that came up, Pioneer Days, we did have to take out the money for an event. I know it's a hard one, but hard for us to justify spending money on an event and when we're trying to basically survive. So things like that are going to be changed, Councillor Brack. But again, we'll have far more detail next week for you on that.
Thank you. One last question is, we can go kind of into our infamous vac truck situation. So if we buy a vac truck, we save on, I believe it was $15,000 in lease. It'll go to roughly around $3,500 after the purchase. The question is we're obviously going to be stuck with that, roughly the amount that's still at that $3,500 per month. What's our long-term strategy, or where are we looking? I know last time, I think you were doing a walk around with the engineer to kind of find out, what the chances are, what's going to be happening there. Do we have any updates on that?
I would say the biggest thing with that is to really solve the problem with the sewer is we need a sewer line that connects to there, and that comes with the future development, but we can't do it ahead of that. There's just no way. It's a $12 million sewer line. We have to find ways to get there. But in the short term, the benefit to the vac truck and ownership of the vac truck is, I'll be honest, at this point it's an $11,500 bill that gets paid on a monthly basis. It's been 2 and a bit years. We've bought the vac truck already once over at this point in time. So would have been nice to get this done sooner, but too many irons in the fire. We had to reprioritize and find sustainability, basically, right? So But what I will say is in the long run, owning the asset as opposed to continually leasing it that provides no benefit to us in the long run is eventually we'll get some trade-in value if we end up having to upgrade it or change it over. There's also some extra benefits we get and extra uses that we can utilize it for as well too. So I asked Public Works about that. Thought I printed the email, but forgot about it. But there's other things that we use it for, especially in the lift station. A lot of repairs that we can do in there using the back truck that we wouldn't be able to without that. So it does have extra benefits. It's not the ideal situation. We're not, municipalities aren't usually in the business of owning back trucks, but we do what we can in this case.
Was there anything that Select Engineering had said, or anything that's other than we need the development to get it?
So, first indications, not much at this time, but I will say we have asked for interesting alternatives to be looked at, and we are meeting with Select again in a couple weeks and another engineering group that we've also asked for an opinion on, and so we're going to be meeting them in the next couple of weeks. But the only thing I will say is that whatever the solution is, nothing has come back that's not in the millions of dollars, which is very difficult for us at this time. That said, I will say that we have had, in my opinion, some positive discussions around retrieving money back for money that we put in the ground. I can't speak too much in detail about it this time because it's still in discussion, but we are looking at updating our offsite levy bylaw, our development agreements, and we may have an opportunity for a possibility of significant cash flow coming to the town soon. That would help support the purchase and possibly the procurement of capital assets related to the Heartland area if possible.
Councillor Smolitz?
I just follow up on the back truck place, just to put some rest to this and some questions that I get. So we are purchasing the unit that we've been leasing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the operator of the back truck will be a town employee or somebody we're hiring extraneous, or?
We're not planning on hiring an actual contractor, we're planning on training our own employees to use the back truck, yes. We're also, I want to say this, still in the discussions, and hopefully the back truck owners isn't watching this, but we're still in discussions, and I'm hoping to negotiate a discount on the back truck in relationship to the cost that we've shown there, but again, negotiations are finicky. Okay.
And that's all based on the previous council passing a motion to purchase that back truck, so that never happened.
No, it never happened.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Councillor St. Germain?
Sorry, I'm also going back on the backtrack. Thank you for asking your questions because they answered mine. So we are looking at them working with us, the fact that we've been leasing it for so long. We're in negotiations with company for purchase.
You can't blame them for negotiating a lease with us that was in their favor. So we have no choice but to negotiate with them. We can break the lease, but then we'd have to replace it. We know this truck, it's in good shape, we've been maintaining it, so it makes sense for us to buy it.
Never hurts to ask though, right?
A part of the original agreement actually did result in a rental credit. So the first 6 months was 72%. The second 6 months I did was 50%. So we did get a rental credit out of it. That stayed, but the remainder of the lease payments were obviously fully leased that way.
So there was a bylaw that was for the back truck. So was that money ever taken out? No. Okay. And then is it a possibility to train some of our employees? Would that be cheaper than hiring?
Through Mr. Mayor, I just mentioned, again, for one of the questions I've asked, that we fully intend to train our own employees on everything we do. And so I have reached out to private companies, one in which that actually did our snow carting this year, that have expertise in driving graders and back truck operations, a number of things, and we're working out a deal where they will train our staff. Our staff are great, don't get me wrong, they are trained to an extent, but there are some things that we deem that need improvement, and we're working on some external training opportunities right now to support that.
So is that an extra cost, or is that
No,
factored into the budget?
it's in the budget, so no extra cost.
Councillor Curry.
I know you said we'll get into more detail next week, but I've had several people reach out to me regarding Pioneer Days, so I feel like I should kind of extend that conversation just slightly. When you say taking event money away from that, is that minimizing, like, is it going to be a lesser event or completely, do we know if it's going to be completely shut down?
First, I'm pretty sure in our procedural bylaw that Dallas fans can't ask questions, but all kidding aside.
It's been asked.
Okay, no, all kidding aside, we've recognized recently, because of some of the feedback we've got in the last week or two, that Pioneer Days is pretty important. We've met with the team from the museum, and they've asked us if the town is not going to lead it, if they could lead a Pioneer Days event, and they were told that the possibility they could use the name Pioneer Days. We said, absolutely, use the name Pioneer Days if you want, and if you're looking to lead the event and look for fundraising, we'd be more than happy to support you in kind with labor, whatever we can. We just can't afford the $20,000 at this time, because that was our stance at this time. Of course, if our financial situation changes for any reason, there's always opportunities to amend an operating budget, but this time it's certainly not a recommendation we can make.
Okay. And then I guess since we're on the theme, if we have a parade, the vac truck can be in the parade.
Mr. Mayor, if you've never been to Mundare for their parade, one of the big things about the Mundare parade is it's amazing actually. It's all the farm equipment, all the graders, all the equipment from the town is actually in the parade, and I can still remember my kid running in front of one of the trucks and I had to grab him because they threw all the gum and candies out right through the parade. But absolutely, we'll put our equipment in the parade if we can have one.
I had to do that with Daryl last year. He was...
Yeah, I think we're good. Yep.
Excellent, thank you. So, I'll just detail, I guess, the changes that we went through. We started off with a $186,000 increase, which was equivalent to 4.89%. We went through the flagged items process, answered a couple questions around that, made some adjustments due to that. So there were some big changes in there. One of the things around the fitness center, for example, is we made some pretty drastic changes in there to change things up. There was some significant savings in that way. In the museum, there were some changes that we had made there around going down to one staff member for the summer instead of two. Spoke with the museum on it and they were on board with it. Had to make some adjustment to the back truck costs as I investigated further and saw that we were a little light on the budget. So made a couple adjustments there and then plugged in some of the capital funding requirements. So one of the items specific to the capital funding requirement is that skid steer buyback program. So brief explanation of it is every year we trade in the skid steer for the newer model and we pay the difference. So it's a really good program. A lot of municipalities are doing this actually. It's a very, very popular program where we continually get to upgrade the skid steer at minimal cost. So this year was a $31,000 amount. That may change because that quote was from November, but we get what we get when we get the quotes. So that might change, but the big piece of that is things of that nature we usually try to fund through operating. And the reason for that is because they're in essence operating in nature. We don't want to fund a program that is an annual program by using grants or using debt or reserves realistically. We want to make sure that we have sustainable funding for that. So that's one of the things that was included as well there. So the net impact of the adjustments or the net change was just under $12,000 or just over an $11,000 increase. So very minimal. They kind of offset each other for the most part and resulted in a revised tax revenue increase of $197,145, which is the 5.2% that we talked about. Any questions or anything on that one? Okay. So next up, as Tim alluded to, we talked about some options around what would it look like if we do increases, and increases that specifically are targeting reserve transfer increases. So I put together a little table, I guess you would call it, different options, 1 to 4%, what it would look like, what it would mean. Basically, it's a $37,000 or $38,000 difference for each percentage. Each percentage point just gives us more and more that we are able to put into the bank for future reserves, while also helping us to find ways to smooth the 3-year plan, as Tim mentioned, because there's some peaks and valleys, I guess I would call them, for right now. Specifically 2029 is where we hit a pretty significant peak with the principal portions coming back into the debenture payments. So what we need to do with this is just try and target a smooth change and smooth growth. Benefit to this as well is the more we throw away into reserves, the less chance we have of crashing and burning due to a water main break or something significant happening that we don't have in the budget. So again, the goal of it is to hammer as much through as we can into reserves and transfer as much and get us into a better place. But obviously we can't do that without looking at further increases from there. What I will say is, I'd say the average right now for this year was probably 7 to 8% from what I saw across Alberta. There were some around I think Redwater was 4.91 if I remember right, and then I had a couple that were 7%, and then like Tim mentioned, passed a budget for 11% this year. So that's a record for me. I've never gone that high, but just goes to show you that's where we are right now. That's where Alberta is. The last, 10 years, I guess I would say, for the last 5 of it, especially thanks to COVID, 0% was the standard. Everyone was doing 0%. And it works, it's great to help out, but now we're seeing the effects of it. Now we're seeing 7% as the average. So 4% is usually the minimum that we see for most municipalities. Upwards to 8% is kind of the average right now. So just, again, some perspective on it and something to think about when you're weighing the options at that point. On the next slide. So what I did with this is I just did, again, another table, and I do have cheat sheets, I guess you can call them, singular cheat sheets where it goes a little bit more in depth and kind of shows the calculations better. But what I wanted to do was show what's the difference between the 2026 municipal tax levy versus 2025. And again, this is assuming no assessment changes, all things equal. But if there was no assessment change, what would the number look like for this level of increase? So 5.2% obviously is a municipal tax levy of $33.68. Last year would have been $32.02. So again, $166 difference. Each percentage increase is pretty much a $30 or $31 difference. I think I calculated in there. 32 I think it is what it actually was around. So every step basically shows a $32 per year increase to the average household, which I have at $396,000 for the average assessment. So that shows the different levels. Again, just providing context. I'm trying to provide as much information as possible so we can make a decision based off of where things stand on that. Next up, I guess, is one of the other pieces that we wanted to talk about was utilities. Utilities has been kind of a hot topic. We have some issues for sure, I would say, in utilities in that we haven't been able to put away the reserve money that was the original plan. That's a failing on the administration's part. We're looking to fix that. So there are smoothing strategies that we're going to look at within the 3-year plan, things we want to change, things we want to adjust. But one thing we do need to look at as well is how do we continue to put away more money. So usually we do that through utility rate increases. So what we included in the current budget as an option is 3% increases to the rates, but those are specifically offset by a corresponding reserve transfer. So it's not more money coming into the operating budget, it's money that is flowing directly through into our reserves for the future. So the total of those, and again, this is just based on my preliminary calculations, I have yet to go through the full utility rate analysis, ends up with just under a $70,000 reserve transfer increase that we put away if we did a 3% rate increase for 2026. Now, what I will say is that's annual. So we are in April, just about May at this point, so we're going to have to prorate that number, but that's what the annual amount would be if we did a 3% increase. any questions, anything on that? That's most of what I had for changes and options. Would like to answer anything that comes up from there.
Councilor St. Germain.
So with the utility, will that be going into restricted funds then?
Correct.
For future infrastructure? And then, I know we've discussed it before, but I just want to refresh my memory. We had charged that previously as an infrastructure. So then are we paying that back? Or we're just moving forward of this is what we're doing now? Because there was a previous that went into general coffers.
Correct, and that's the administrative failing I'm referring to, is that absolutely should not have happened, but that's what we need to fix moving forward. Now, the challenge is, I can't do that in a year. That'd be a monumental task. It could be done, but one of the big pieces around utilities that I think I should get into a little bit is, utilities are often subsidized by tax. Most municipalities subsidize their utilities by tax because they don't charge enough. This is one of the municipalities, and there are other ones that this exists in, but this is one of the municipalities that subsidizes tax with utilities. Now, there's benefits and negatives either way. So one of the big pieces around this that I bring up with most councils is you get to control how much you use your utilities. You do not get to control how much you pay in tax. That's one important distinction to make. But either way, you're paying the amount, whether you pay through your utilities, whether you pay through your taxes. There are some cases where that's not necessarily the case. For example, businesses that are maybe non-resident but for the most part, everything is paid by either taxes or utilities. So you're paying it one way or another. Most of the councils that I talk about it with say, well, it is kind of fair that it's done in something that the user has control over. So again, just perspective, but something we do want to change moving forward. We do need to get to a point where the utility rate analysis shows we are cost recovery, and by cost recovery that means our operations are fully funded, but we're also able to put away money into reserves to target the amortization amount or target the future funding. I personally am not a big fan of using amortization numbers because I find them to be somewhat inaccurate. What I like to do is really focus it based on 10-year plan, 15-year plan, or 20-year plan even, but in most cases we like to target it to what is our future spend actually going to look like. Build in inflation into that and see what that number looks like. That's where we want to try and get to, but again, that's a good few years worth of planning at that point, realistically.
I'd like to add one quick thing. The one thing about utility and municipal, so you have basically what we call kind of three streams of collection. Basically, you have municipal, utility, and then there's library. And typically, municipal and utility are what we call self-sustaining. So taxes basically balance utility balance. But it is not abnormal, and in some places it's not on purpose, where a dividend is paid to municipal from the utility. And two examples I can tell you right now is just down the road, Redwater has its own natural gas utility and it actually pays a significant dividend back to minimize taxes. Medicine Hat does the same, and City of Edmonton does it with EPCOR. So EPCOR is 100% wholly owned subsidiary of the City of Edmonton. And my understanding is on some years they actually pay up to $100 million back to municipality to subsidize taxes. And so though this was done, and I think improperly, there's no doubt, it's not abnormal for a municipality to be running a surplus that's transferred to municipal, though this isn't the way it should be done. That's it, as Ryan said, we can fix it, but it can't be fixed in a year. This is going to take some time.
Sorry, am I reading this correctly? So would that be a 9% increase overall to the utility bills of our residents? 3%. 3% or 9%?
3% on each line. So sewer 3%, water 3%, and then garbage 3%. It's just a 3% increase to that specific line.
So on your utility bill, you have three separate charges: water, sewer, and then refuse, so garbage pickup. And so we're proposing bottom line 3%, bottom line, but 3% each one of those different areas. So it's 3% total.
So each one would increase by 3%, just to be clear.
Exactly. Each one would increase by 3%, and net is 3% total.
Thank you.
Mr. Jondrek?
Mr. Mayor and Council, if there's questions of council, I'd like those first, but I have some comments and then some questions of administration as well regarding the budget. Would you like me to proceed?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, administration has put a lot of time into developing the budget, and so that's commendable. And as has been mentioned this evening, the 26 budget is a significant task. It's very, very challenging, and due to the significant changes that have been required to make. I have commented orally and in writing to administration as far back as January to try and put as much information into the budget document to identify what the impact of the changes in service levels are. And I recall a question from a councillor when reductions in public works was mentioned, and pothole patching was saying we're going to cut back on pothole patching, and the question was, well, how long can we cut back on pothole patching, and when are we going to get back to doing what needs to be done, and what does a cutback mean? And I believe that's very important information for council because you're on the front lines. And so the document, there's been already questions raised about the impact on service levels in some of the specific areas. But administration and I have talked about the necessity of having that kind of information available, as much detail as possible regarding service levels. And there are a lot of changes that are being made, and the jury will still be out regarding whether or not those changes were the right decisions, or whether or not there needs to be going back to the drawing board and revisiting some of those decisions. I feel, and I believe that administration has articulated it as well, that it's a fluid situation in trying to deal with this. Now we're getting close to tax decision time, getting close to having this council make the decisions regarding what the taxes are going to be for 26, and to try and achieve the deadline of when a bylaw should be done so that the tax notices get out near the end of May. And as official administrator, I could wait until that decision, until council makes the decision, and then determine whether or not I will approve that decision. But time is of the essence. And so I have taken the approach to work with administration in trying to get the high level of the impact of the decisions that are being made and being put forward, so that hopefully even as early as next Tuesday, that a budget decision will be made that I can go along with. And so administration and I have been working back and forth on that, and it's regarding the information and the content, not the decisions, not the administrative decisions or the council decisions, etc. Now I want to make one other concluding comment before I start asking some questions, and I posed these questions to Tim and Ryan this afternoon, so they're aware of the questions that I will be asking. When the agenda package went out yesterday, and I looked at the document, I was not pleased with what I saw, because it didn't have the executive summary in the agenda package. And I tried to get a hold of the CAO and wasn't successful in that. And so I talked to Chris, the legislative officer, And so, Chris, this evening I want to apologize for raising my voice in the conversation, because I was somewhat frustrated, because I felt it was very important to have an executive summary that provides a summary of the detail that's going to be buried in the pages and pages and pages of the document, and it's something that is necessary. And so the agenda package that you do have now has that executive summary, which possibly may even be tweaked before next Tuesday. So we're approaching the deadline for approving a budget. And there's some broad questions and some specific ones that I want to address this evening. And I want to start by saying that some of the questions that I'm going to start with focus on revenues, because revenues drive the budget. If the revenues aren't there, there are negative implications, as what is being experienced by the town regarding the 2025 situation, because there's a potential deficit. In the executive summary refers to a funding shortfall of 1.1 million. That still has to be determined when the audited financials come out. And a principle being used regarding revenues that in my many years of budgeting is to budget revenues conservatively and budget expenses liberally within reason. And it generally gets a pretty good bottom line, or a reasonable bottom line, by the end of the fiscal year. So my first question is to administration is, are there revenue areas that concern you, that you're just not sure? Now, I appreciate the way that administration has budgeted for the development revenues, which are significant, that they are not being counted on to provide services. As they come in, they will be put into a restricted surplus account. I use the term restricted surplus, the town uses the term reserves, but it's the same term. So the question is to either Ryan or Tim, are you confident that the revenues that are in the budget right now are sufficient and can be achieved?
Again, fair question. We looked at revenues extensively. We recognize what we consider errors in the past in the way that revenues were approached. We strongly believe that the revenues that we have put into this base budget, again, from a taxation, utility perspective, fees and charges, which are your core revenues, are definitely going to be achieved. So we don't have any concerns from that perspective. Development revenues, again, I've been doing this for a long time, are always something that we're never assured, but we're also conservative in our approach as we transfer them to reserve. And so we are optimistic. It's going to take negotiation, which I do have experience in doing, and so we feel confident we'll achieve strong development revenue. But at the same time, if they're not achieved, we've got a backup plan, which would be not to transfer them into reserve. So we feel from a revenue perspective, this budget's very safe.
Councilor Morrison?
Respectfully, Mr. Johnsrud, I believe that we were still getting into the revenue and expenses final page of the presentation, were we not? This one?
It was just a summary that I attached with the updated numbers, but
Okay.
if there was any questions, we can definitely get into that. Absolutely.
Wasn't the intent to review this in any level of detail?
No.
Okay, I apologize, I was confused. I believed that you were going ahead of the presentation, so I apologize.
So one thing I do want to add to this is, nobody at this point probably knows better than I do how many revenue items there were that I believe are in error, I guess I would say. So that was one of the big major things that I brought up and we reported on and we talked about extensively. So like Tim mentioned, the big thing that we do when we want to budget conservatively, which in reality any one-time item should be budgeted for conservatively, and we budget for that using offsetting reserve transfers, because the opposite side of that, or the end of it, is if the revenue doesn't materialize, the reserve transfer doesn't materialize. So they both offset each other. It has no operating budget impact in the end.
Another comment that administration has made in previous council meetings is that council will be receiving, once the budget is approved, a monthly financial report where there will be variances identified and trends identified by administration. That's so much more important than reviewing a check register. And so that is very significant and really will need to be followed closely in monitoring the situation for this year. The era that we're in is inflationary, and even in non-inflationary eras, there's still inflation in certain areas. And I'm just curious from a comment from either one, Tim or Ryan, as to what are some of the significant areas that there has been inflation and what those factors are or percentages.
The key inflationary problem, and this is for municipalities across, Canada, and quite frankly, the world right now, the main one, we buy a lot of fuel and oil-related products from a public perspective, and so inflation on fuels, our gravel, road oil, things like that we do, oil change type of materials, are one of the key areas that we identified for inflation, Mr. Johnsrud. Other areas, of course, employee benefits, there were some factors there. I believe the RCMP contract had inflation on that. I will tell you the method that we use, the Bloom method for developing budgets, is we go through every area and question ourselves as to whether we should put an inflation factor and a growth factor in or not. And so basically oil-related products, employee benefits were the main ones. Anything else, goods and services, Ryan? I think those were the two that we really were very particular about. Water, we always look at because water is a flow through, so we want to make sure that balance. So we checked the water rates and what we were going to be paying to the commission. Was there anything else I missed? Right?
Nothing major outside of the other one that had a really, really big impact on 25 and 26 was the tariffs from the states as well too. Now that's more in the capital, so when we're buying iron and buying things like that, that's where we saw some really big ones. One really prominent example was actually fire trucks. Fire trucks almost doubled in price in 25 and 26. So call it a blessing in disguise, I guess. We bought one in 24 before the prices skyrocketed, but that $800,000 fire truck's now probably $1.5, if not $2 million at this point. So there are tariff impacts as well in there too, but for the most part, that hits more of the bigger areas. Sand and gravel was one of the big ones as well, but again, that's more of an MD-based type thing. So.
Okay, another question. Even for municipalities that are not experiencing financial difficulties, I'm a proponent that a cash flow document from the January 1st financial position of cash to the projected December 31st using the budget is an important document in the budget, even more so for the town of Gibbons in your current situation. So the question is sort of twofold, is that what is the projected cash position in the short-term debt situation for December 31st, 26? And the second part of the question is, how does this budget achieve the minister's request to meet the legislated debt limit by December 31st, 26?
Through Mr. Mayor, on the first question, I think our operating budget, as we mentioned, is hoping to have a $1 million transfer reserve by year end at minimum. So I'd say from a cash flow perspective, we're confident that we should be able to, with everything that we're spending and completing this year, by the end of the year, have a cash surplus of $1 million, and so that's our potential cash flow. One of the key things in conservative budgeting, and this is the beauty of the way that we've done it, is that $1 million forecast, which we have forecasted, gives us a bit of room for error. If something comes up during the year, something unforeseen, maybe inflation well beyond what we expected, it gives us a bit of room to make corrective measures without having to go back to council or to the taxpayer for additional dollars. And so we're pretty confident that our cash flow should be $1 million. We're hoping for up to $3 million. And again, we're pretty confident in those numbers.
Specifically regarding the debt management piece, that's where Reserve transfers are reserve transfers, but they don't have to be reserve transfers. So one of the pieces that we will be discussing as time goes on is how much do we put in reserves versus how much do we pay down our short-term debt, right? So there's lots of options, lots of opportunities. We always want to show a balanced budget, just because that's standard practice. But that being said, end of the year comes around, we might not want to put $1 million in the bank. We might want to put $500,000 on short-term debt or $500,000 in reserves. There's lots of options, lots of opportunities, and that's the goal of this, was to keep it as flexible as possible so we can adjust and do things as needed.
Maybe a question for you, Mr. John. I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we are compliant with the MJ under the debt limits at this time. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by ministerial order asking us to become compliant. We already are compliant. What we haven't done is we haven't used any of the additional debt that the ministerial order gave us at the beginning of this process, nor have we put anything in this capital budget nor this budget requesting additional debt. So our goal is to be responsible, not use debt if we don't need it, and certainly maintain being compliant, but get us into a position of probably being more, from best practice, down to a debt limit that would be reasonable. And for a municipality of this size, it's not uncommon to be at maybe 50% of your debt limit. So I don't think that's a problem, but it's going to take us some time to get to that point.
Okay, well, the letter from the minister, I don't have it in front of me, but was to extend the debt limit, the legislative debt limit to the town of Gibbons, and to be within it by December 31st, 26.
We never used it.
That's right. So we actually are currently within the normal debt limit at this point in time. The extension we asked for, we haven't utilized. The only caveat I have to that is one of the loans that was taken out, that was listed as a capital loan, in actuality doesn't really relate to capital. So the one area that we will not be compliant is in our operating loan balance. So that one will have to be addressed and will have to be dealt with. But again, it's something that'll be a work in progress and something hopefully we'll be able to address by the end of the year. But overall debt limit wise, overall number wise, we are within the limits.
Good, okay. Tim might have already alluded to this, but with a budget that has a lot of different changes, I'm just wondering whether or not the budget should include a contingency and a specific budget line. I've suggested $200,000. That could be debatable, but that instead of relying on going to a restricted surplus account, which right now is minimal, that it's a line in the budget, not in a specific department, would be in a general section, and that it would have parameters on how it can be used. Parameters as to what would be the limitations for administration to use it before coming to council for approval. But it would be just something there that would assist with the whole budget deliberations, the budget proceedings, etc., and the implementation. Because as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of changes that are taking place, and maybe there's some things that either were missed or underestimated that need to be addressed. And so it would be a specific area. I'm not going to ask for a response on that. It's just a suggestion that to administration that I would endorse that.
So agreed, 100%. What I will say on this one is I can call it this admin reserve transfer for a $932,775, or I could have a line in the budget as an expenditure for contingency for $932,775. It's two ways of getting in the same place. I list it as a reserve transfer because what we are required to do then is council passes reserve transfers by resolution. An amendment to a reserve transfer has to get passed by resolution. So anything that we're going to do knowingly that takes away from the admin reserve transfer for example, an unexpected expenditure of some type, we are required to bring that to council and explain it and get a resolution approving the change at that point. So it adds an additional governance step to the piece as well too.
Okay. The next question, and it's in reading the detail that will be addressed in the next council meeting, but it's in the corporate services section, and the question is, what is the schedule of discontinuing the contracted administration and appointing a CAO as an employee? Is there, what's in the 26 budget? I know those kind of decisions require council decisions, but what is in the 26 budget regarding that?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Harold Runzer. Right now, it is fully under contracted services, assuming that the Bloom contract would probably go to year end. However, we're open to change at any time, depending on the town situation. One of the things this council has asked, and this public has asked the town halls, is that we stay until the situation's fixed. It would be remiss to put in a new CAO that does not have the history or basically the background of the work that we've put in to date. I think that would be very difficult. This is not a normal situation. I think we have to determine whether the viability review result comes out to what we believe it will be. We then have to put in our performance measures and our performance plans for staff. We have to complete and implement our organizational review and change implement and those sorts of things before we change. That said, it is always a decision of council. The monies that we have in the current contract are exactly what it would cost for a typical sale of a municipality of this size, and so I want to make sure that that's very clear. But I would like to ask, I think at this time, maybe this question be passed over to council, because ultimately it's up to them whether they want to hire a different sale than the Bloom team. I'd like to hear what their thoughts are before we leave this question. Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Morrison?
I think that, I'll speak for myself, but I think I speak for all of council in that we're in for a penny and for a pound with you. You've gained our trust. Your work has spoken for itself, and I think that we have determined us to be a team to weather through. That would be my opinion, but I certainly one that's been echoed by the rest of council over and over again. I do want to circle back to the contingency after my fellow councillors have had an opportunity to address this question.
For me, right now, we're in the thick of things. It's always on the back of our mind is when will this contract come to an end? We have a viability review to get through, and a very tough budget to get through at this stage of the game. So the expertise that we have at the table right now is for all of us here at the table, all of us being new, is very beneficial to us. So I would say going forward, probably I would agree, probably year-end-ish in that neighborhood, and because I'm sure it'll take some time. From what I've been watching, some other municipalities have had difficulty finding qualified and good CAOs, so it's not an easy task, and it'll take some time to do it as well. Councillor Curry?
You're here forever, Tim. No, like you mentioned at the start, we had to get to know each other. There was a bit of a rough, I wouldn't say rough patch, but I mean, it was kind of, we had some questions and some concerns, and it kind of took you by surprise, I think. But I think over the past, whatever it's been, 4 or 5 months, I think relationships have gotten really good. We've seen a lot of work that you do, results, doing things that, we couldn't have had anyone else come in and do. I just think it's a great working relationship, and we've made a lot of progress. And in my mind right now, there's no reason to even consider, thinking about someone else. It's just we're full steam ahead right now, and that's really all that's on my mind anyway.
Councillor Breck?
As Councillor Curry said, you know, we did have a little bit of a rough patch. I think that's, in essence, I think that's a good thing because it gets everyone speaking and it gets questions asked. To even consider or trying to look at ending a contract when we're this deep into it and from the strides that we've made, I think that would be utterly foolish. I think that'd be probably one of the dumbest moves that the town could make, short of what the previous administration did, and that's where they got us. So I think we are on the right track, and I think that the Bloom team is doing a good job. I mean, look to where we were 4 months ago to where we are now. You know, are we swimming in cash? Nope, impossible. You yourself, Harold, couldn't do it. So it's as far as I'm concerned, I think we're good, and we just have to stay the course.
Best for last. Councillor St. Germain?
I agree with my fellow councillors that, you know, we've gone through some hard times, we've fought it out, and I'm sure there's still more battles to come. But we get there in the end, what we need to do. Considering the battles we're facing, I think that we need qualified people, and from what I've been researching with other communities, we're not paying a lot more than what they are. And when you're in the type of situation that everybody says it's never happened before, we need the best, and we have the best, and we stand behind them. We stand behind our staff, and we're trying our best to be as open and honest as we possibly can with our community. My other concern is that with Bill 28 coming in and the changes that are being made and the relationships with other municipalities, we need strong help backing us. Because we're part way through a process and then they changed the game on us. So we need advocacy, we need help from both you, Harold, as well as the Bloom team. And we have a good team happening now, we just need to push it through for our citizens.
You want him to be the best for last.
Oh,
He said that was.
Councillor Longstaff?
I echo the other councillors in that some things that people don't realize is it's not just the CAO that we're looking at. We're looking at the entire Bloom team and each of their different levels of expertise, which for us, especially as an entirely new council, is something we can't get from just hiring another CAO that we may or may not be able to trust, kind of like previous ones. We're getting quite the quality for our dollar with the entire team and their different levels of expertise.
Okay, best for last.
Best for last. Well, I just want to concur with my fellow councillors. This is not time to make change, you know, down the line, maybe year end or whatever, when time comes. I think Bloom is reasonable enough to assume they're not going to be here forever either. And this isn't the time to make any kind of switch, and it's been very successful. So that's it.
Mr. Johnson?
So, two more comments. One is regarding the utility surplus, and there's been quite a bit of dialogue on that already when you were dealing with the 3% fee increase for utilities. So I'm going to just spend a little bit of time going through some numbers here. So the 26 budget has a surplus after all the operating expenses, excluding amortization, has a surplus of $676,000. And then there is a transfer that's already in the budget of $217,000, which leaves $459,000 potentially. Okay. And currently the budget has the $459,000 used for other purposes. Now, amortization using the 2024 financial statements was $379,000. I'm of the position, and I think you are too, that dollars need to be set aside for infrastructure rehabilitation. There's been a lot of situations, or some major situations that have been in the press regularly, For example, the city that's closer to me that has Flames instead of Oilers has experienced a lot of infrastructure difficulties with their water. I looked at financial statements from different points of view, and one of the things that I do when I look at a municipality's financial statement is how many dollars, or what is the strategy they have been using to set aside dollars for future infrastructure replacement. And the town of Gibbons, from 2021 to 2024, had $1.5 million in surplus in the utilities. And nothing has been set aside for infrastructure replacement. I look at that as a hidden tax. Everybody looks at the tax revenues per capita, but they don't look at what the utility surpluses are. And so I look at it as a hidden tax. And administration, in their comments in the discussion several minutes ago, understands the need for dollars to go into infrastructure rehabilitation. But doing that all at once is potentially difficult. I would like to see it done all at once. Ideally, I would like to see, and I agree with Ryan, amortization expense is based on a historical cost, and these utility lines last 50 years plus. And so what's the cost of rehabilitating it in today's dollars? A lot more than what the amortization expense is. But I'm a firm believer of putting those dollars into a fund for future infrastructure, and even if there's a surplus greater than the amortization, that it's set aside in a fund for utilities for whatever needs to be done. And so this is something that I want to see addressed before the 26 budget is approved. How it's going to be addressed, I think, needs to be discussed with administration and myself as far as presenting it to council next Tuesday. A staggered approach, possibly, which I discussed with administration this afternoon, could be considered. But I just feel that it needs to be started now and not deferred until next year. One of the Johnsrud principles for budgeting is next year's never better, and it often happens that way. So that's the way I'd like to see that. In conclusion, in my comments, is that I will not be prepared to make a decision regarding a 2026 budget motion by council until I see what the multi-year plan is. That the multi-year plan takes it to the year that the debt principal kicks in. And Ryan has alluded to that already on the need of planning for that big event, that big year, when the restructured debt principle is starting to hit the budget document. So because the reason why I will defer on the 26th is because what will the message or the requirements be for implementing 3 or 4 years from now, that there isn't a huge tax increase required to achieve paying the debt principal, and that maybe there needs to be an increased tax, a tax increase greater this year and continuing on to handle the year that debt comes on the stream. So I haven't seen anything yet. Administration and I have talked about the need for the multi-year plans, and It doesn't have to be sophisticated as far as the multi-year. We've talked about that. So thanks for the time for my comments and for your replies.
Councillor Tate, you may.
I had a question. So you're saying that we need to put money away for future infrastructure issues? But my question is, if we're not doing any infrastructure audit and we're just doing our best guess and previous documents, why wouldn't we be pushing that now to do the infrastructure audit so we have a more fulsome understanding of what we need to put away in the future and what might be required?
Infrastructure rehabilitation costs a lot of dollars. So whether or not there's a specific plan as what's going to be done 4 years from now, to start setting dollars aside in the utilities area, no time like the present.
Through Mr. Mayor, I will comment that with the experience that we have, which is over decades, though an infrastructure audit is important information, it's not necessarily critical information for us to be able to develop a long-term financial plan and reserve plan related to infrastructure. So though it helps speak to and inform the plan, it isn't critical for the plan. I would agree with Mr. Johns that this is something that we can start now. Also, in addition, just for information, you know, for the request for the utilities, I can do the math in my head. It's not going to be difficult for us to develop a plan that would transfer the utility back to taxes to smooth this out. My guess it would be probably, and if Harold's okay with this, let me know now, we would develop probably about a 10-year plan that would transfer the $400,000, basically a 1% tax dollar levy per year that would transfer the utility dollars back to taxes. Is 10 years sufficient, or if you feel it should be shorter, that'll be more difficult, but I think a 10-year plan would be sufficient to be able to fix the situation.
Harold, the question was to you.
Too long, too short?
I don't have a comment on that. I've been involved in 10 and 20-year plans, and so to come up with a 10-year plan that is feasible is something worth addressing.
We'll do the math for the Tuesday.
Councillor Breck.
Mr. Johns, you actually brought up a couple good points on planning for future. And one of the things that when you plan for future, you also have to know what happened in the past and why it happened in the past. And I noticed in the budget that we don't have forensic audit. And I strongly believe, in fact, I'm going to bring forward a motion that we do put the forensic audit in the budget. I think that people have the right to know. I think they want to know. And I think that it's important. You can't get to the states that Gibbons is in without really royally screwing stuff up. So we need to know why and how. So my question to you, Harold, is are you going to approve when we bring forward a motion to have a forensic audit done?
Well, the short answer is no. And going back to the presentation that was made several months ago, I felt, and I mentioned it to administration, I felt that the minutes of that presentation should have included a summary of the presentation and not just a motion from council to accept as information. And the summary, and correct me if I'm wrong, the summary of that presentation was that a forensic audit is time consuming, a forensic audit is very costly, a forensic audit does not have guarantees that the police force or RCMP will be brought in for further investigation. And they even went as far as to say that a forensic audit does not necessarily guarantee any kind of civil lawsuit that would win. And so it identified a very poor cost-benefit approach.
I'm still gonna bring forward a motion. I guess my question is, you're prepared to put that in writing, that you'll turn that down, that we can let all the citizens know that you're blocking that motion?
Yeah, so the procedure is that if I deny a motion, I put in reasons why I would deny the motion.
I just want to make a comment regarding that, going back to kind of the pothole comments that you made about, you know, we're on the front lines, we're the ones that, you know, deal with the public face to face and online every day. It's very much, I mean, it's the same thing here with this whole forensic audit thing. We are on the front line, and we get asked this and comments thrown towards us every single day regarding this thing, and it's very much something that, you know, when we started out, it was something that was atop our minds and something that we wanted. And there's been, I want to make it clear, like there's been so much stuff obviously to do like in this past few months, but it's still something that is up here with us, especially like us on the front lines with the public. And I can tell you that it is something very much that the public wants, and that pressure is very much there. And I just wanted to make that comment.
Councilor St. Germain?
Again, we are hearing that our citizens, they want accountability, they want to know what happened. You know, will it bring our money back? Probably not. But they want to know the who, what, where, how. Why are we all paying for stuff that we didn't do? It's not like we have anything to show for it, really. And I just want to say that we came to fix this. None of us needed this job. We all have our own jobs aside of this. We came to fix it. We're not, if I don't get elected next term, I'm okay with that, as long as I can fix what I came to fix. I'm not worried about losing my job because I didn't do my job. I will do the job to the best of my ability, but the fact that other people in the provincial government have spoken up and said they were worried about losing their job if we did the forensic audit is insane to me, and the fact that it feels like it's being covered up.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment?
Yes.
So, the definition of fixing is happening is just right in this meeting as far as the budget discussion. To me, that's the definition of fixing. To go against advice and spend a lot of dollars, to me, is maybe pacifying a percentage of the residents, but does not fit in the definition of fixing.
Councilor Longstaff?
It's not just a matter of just fixing with the forensic audit. Yeah, the chances of us getting anything recouped are slim to none. But one of the things that would be really beneficial is if we could legally put names out that actually are proven to have done the damage to this town that's very hard to repair, and maybe prevent other municipalities from having those people do the same thing to them. That's one of the biggest things.
Councilor Brack?
It's also a matter of burying things. When you allow something to happen, or you have a suspicion, or you figure there's something going, by not investigating, not doing it, as you say, you know, we're dealing with it now, but you're also burying it by not. And I don't think that, you know, if someone did wrong by you, I don't think that you would want to just move on. You don't bury stuff. You investigate it, you figure it out, you sort it out, and you fix it.
I agree that what you say, Harold, with fixing and moving forward with this stuff that we need to get done. I agree with you 100%, and that's, you know, we've been working really hard, and you've been here helping, and that's all, you know, that's what this town needs to move forward and get back on its feet. So that's, but speaking of fixing as well, though, is what needs fixing is like our residents, their minds, their hearts, their trust, because this town was shaken, and people, you know, if they don't get the answers at least, that's still always going to be there, and so that needs fixing as well in order for us to fully move forward with everything.
Okay, we'll take one more, we'll get back into the budget. Go ahead, Councilor St. Germain.
I guess my point is, you're either complicit or complacent, and it is part of fixing it, is healing that trust, like Travis, or Councilor Carey said, you know, healing that trust and getting the respect back, not only for us, but all levels of government from our citizens, because right now I'm pretty sure every citizen in Gibbons that has been paying attention to date is pretty shaky with every level of government, and fair enough. You know, we're being questioned if we're hiding stuff. Well, we're being as transparent as we possibly can. But they need to know what happened, how it happened. And it might not only help us, it might help other municipalities who are going through similar things. How did this happen? How did it happen in such a catastrophic way? And how do we prevent it from happening in the future? That's my take. So it is part of fixing it to me. Thank you.
Mr. Hamel?
I'm not sure if this was the end of the discussion, but there's one really critical point I'd like to make. The biggest part to me that's important for the public to be aware of about this conversation, because I think it's been missed, is that this council, from the very moment that I came here, has always intended and wanted accountability. And I think because of, and again, my advice to keep quiet about the discussions that we've had in closed session about investigations and the cost and things like that, because we have to be. From a legal perspective, I want the public to be aware of that. There was always an intent to pursue this. And I think what's happened a bit is that there's this misunderstanding and misinformation in the public right now that this council doesn't believe in accountability, that things are being covered up. That is not the case at all with this council. And that's the biggest point I wanted to make sure that gets across tonight to our public, is that this council has always given me the direction. Find out how we can get to accountability, and that would include a forensic audit. But Mr. John Drew is correct. It's difficult with all of our financial challenges to do something like that because it's incredibly expensive. But that said, I also had a discussion with Mr. John Drew today and said that if we get into a position by the end of this year where we're financially in good shape, it's council's decision ultimately. And so it's not that, and again, I want the public to be aware, always been the intent of this council to pursue accountability and forensic reviews, and eventually, if we can get to a good position financially, you are in control of deciding whether you want to do that or not.
Okay, thanks. Great discussion.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
can I interject?
No, sir, you
No?
can't. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're getting back to the budget.
Yes,
point,
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I'll jump in. Awesome. So just at a high level again, Tim's gonna not be happy with me if I don't talk about this. So 10-year plan, right now the balance or the surplus is $460,000 if I round it up. So 10 years, it's $46,000 a year. 38,000 is our current 1%. So it's a 1.21 amount at that point. That's our percentage increase. Now, that goes down over the course of the 10 years as our tax revenue increases, obviously, because they offset each other. But that's the reality of it, is we're talking 1.21% at this point in time if we look at it doing that offset. The decision to be made, I guess, realistically is, do we do that or do we put away for the emergency fund? Because the emergency fund could be used for utilities when it comes down to it, right? We can move money around by resolution as needed. So in essence, we have done and tried to do this as it is, but if we wanted to focus specifically solely on that, that's the kind of numbers we'd be looking at on an annual basis.
Any questions? No?
What's that?
Recess.
Call a recess for till 2000 hours. 8 o'clock.
What was your question, Bill?
Mike?
What was your
What's your
question?
question?
I wasn't really gonna make a question, I was gonna make a statement about
Okay, Councilor Brack just wants to make a statement.
Your Honor, if you could just call the meeting back to order
Oh.
first, thank you.
Call the meeting back to order, 20:01 hours. Councilor Brack?
I'd like to make a motion to include a project for a forensic audit investigation in the 2026 operating budget, dependent on accumulation of year-end surplus and to be funded from reserve.
Do we have any questions for that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, one abstained? Or,
Against.
against, that's the word.
Opposed.
Opposed,
Pick one of
that's-
those words.
That's the word I was looking for, sorry.
That's a 2% tax increase in order to put a forensic audit in. That's just the start, so I don't agree with it. We've got a lot of debt. I said, to start a forensic audit, we're looking at, the equivalent of a 2% tax increase. And we've got a lot of debt, so I don't feel that it's prudent, so therefore I am opposed.
Thank you. Okay, Ryan, back to you.
Thank you very much. All right, so the last piece of the exciting budget discussion is always capital. So I just want to go through capital. I know I've referenced some of the things, but I do have to talk about the projects and the funding as well. So I'll start off with the skid steer buyback program because I already talked about that and explained it. But basically, again, funded out of the operating budget, so that's where it sits over in the tax levy operating contribution section. I'm going to talk about the vac truck purchase first because it's a little bit easier to explain. Now obviously we're still exploring options around this, but it depends either way, no matter what, whether we take a loan, a debenture, capital lease, either way it's all debt. So we've got it listed as debt, which as I mentioned is a flow through to the operating budget in actuality. So that's where that one's landed as well. The last one is the water reservoir upgrade. So without getting into detail, because I really can't provide detail since I'm not an expert in it, but the big piece of this phase one portion of the project is the PLC system, which I am told basically operates the entire reservoir, is near to failure. So that's the focus of phase one, is replacing the critical infrastructure. So that total project, if I'm remembering right, was around $850,000 originally. It's inevitably gone up since then, but phase one of it would be just under $380,000. So I have that co-funded by two grants. The CCBF grant in its entirety for our allocation for 2026. And then the sort of convoluted LGFF funding. So one of the things the province came to bat on for us as well too was providing options around our LGFF allocations and how we can identify projects and things so that we could turn the LGFF capital funding into support for the operating budget. So that's one of the pieces of it. Now I've got it listed in there as LGFF because in essence it is funded by LGFF, but it could also be sitting in the tax levy operating contribution because it is currently in the operating budget. So again, sort of convoluted. In the end, it's being funded by a grant in actuality. Any questions? Anything anyone wants to discuss on the capital budget items? One thing I do want to say before we get into that is this is right now. Capital budgets are easily and regularly amended. We do that constantly throughout the year as emerging things come up. A little bit easier to amend than the operating budget generally because we're usually funding a reserve or debenture. Whereas once we pass the tax rate bylaw, we have a very difficult time of amending anything in the operating budget. So this is, we'll call it the final capital budget for 2026, but it's never final in reality.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? So before we leave this, Yeah, sorry.
So if you look in your agenda package, I did do 2 additional printouts that I alluded to. I'll maybe just talk a little bit more about the one specifically around the tax impact to the average residential residents. So when I did these calculations, I wanted to show it on a couple different levels. The big piece of it is 2025 to 2026 base, so that's the 5.2% increase, so you can see the difference there is the $166 we referenced. Then the incremental difference as you go up each percentage point is 3202 basically, or 32025 if I remember the number bang on. So where that changes is as you go up, as you look at your different rate increases and consider what we can do with our reserves and what we can do to try and help balance and support the long-term plan, is each incremental difference, and I forgot to change the number, so please ignore the number where it says 4.39 incremental difference. That's an incremental difference from 5.2. But each piece of this, the impact it shows, whereas the actual amount that we're putting away for each of those percentage points is the $38,000. So something important to consider as we talk about what it looks like if we actually go higher. So for example, if we did an 8.2% increase instead of the 5.2, you'd have a just under $100 impact to the average household, but we'd be putting away $114,000 into the reserve. So that's how they correlate and translate. I just wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about them for while council deliberates the potential increases.
Okay, thank you. Are we, budget, the rest of the budget is coming on the 28th, is that correct?
The final budget and our recommendations are coming on 28th. What we're looking for this evening is direction on 5.2 on the potential for between 1 and 4% for the additional tax increase. So that's what we really need to move forward with our final recommendations for next week.
Okay, so you all gathered that what we're looking to do. We're looking for, administration looking for recommendations from us on the 5.2, and then other options available to increases to start applying some funds into the reserve accounts.
To make it easy,
Yeah.
I'm going to just say that administration at this time is reckoning a 9.2% tax dollar increase. Now you can beat us up and we can find something that works. So basically, as Brian mentioned, we do have a sheet here that at maximum, that would give us the maximum amount that we'd be recommending to support increases to our reserves, but we're looking for direction as to where you feel would be the right level of increase. And it can be 0 if you want, but that would cause a significant challenge.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Brack?
I'll take the first bullet. Looking at it and reading everything, not that people are going to be happy, then it hurts a lot of people just because of everything else. I would go with the 8.2% tax increase.
Your Honor, can I just interject, and can we just
Yes.
get a motion to accept the report that was presented
Yeah.
before we move forward with discussion on that?
Thank you, Councilor Morrison.
I move to accept the report as presented.
Any further questions on that? All those in favor? So carried unanimous. All right, Mr. Brack.
As stated earlier, I think in order to help us get into a positive cash flow and to help us get through things, I do believe that the 8.2% tax increase is where I'd be looking at.
Okay, Councilor Morrison.
Just for understanding, Councillor Barak, I agree with you 100%, if not at the 9.2. To be perfectly honest, and when we look at that, to the impact to the citizen, that's at the 8.2, that means basically $90 per $100,000 of assessed value of your home. At the 9.2, it's $100 for every $100,000 of assessed value at your home.
Sorry, that would be $96 at an assessment of $396,000. So if you basically divide it by 4, that'd be the per $100,000 at that point.
Yeah, I did them as per 100,000 and calculated it out. So it's at 9.2, it's 97.75. That's including, but that's when I'm looking at the increase, it's municipal plus the education tax. So it's all in one combined. So I did it so that we could look at it and say, what is this really meaning to my pocketbook in this current year? So, and I like simple paper and that. At $100,000, we all know what our homes are assessed at, whether they're assessed at 100 or whether they're assessed at $1 million. We can do the math. At 9.2, it's again, simple numbers, $100 per 100,000, and at 8.2, it's 90 at 100,000. I think that we need to actually do a couple of things. One, we need to be building our reserves. 2, we need to be showing the province, the county, that we have long-term viability ahead of us, not short-term. And to just balance our budget for this year and not be looking to the future is short-sighted on our side and not working in our favor for viability. So it is a little bit of a kick in the pants, I get it, but if we also, one of the documents that Tim, you presented to us, and I tried to find it, but gosh, I couldn't, and I feel like it was in around December timeframe, was a comparative of all of the municipalities, like municipalities in the area, and the fact that Gibbons was actually significantly under, and I tried to do a little bit of comparative research in the last day or so, and you know, Bonaccord right now is at like almost 11%. Redwater is 10.6. Gibbons is at this point in time still in the 8 and change range. Morinville is 8.6, Legal is 8.3. So we've got a lot of room here and still being comparative to our like municipalities. So I think that I'm absolutely with you. I think that we do need to move a lot more aggressively.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarity on that, so the 8.2 that Councilor Barak was talking about, that's an additional 3% over and above the 5.2. It's not 8.2 plus the 5.2, just for clarification on that matter. And the 9.2 is 4. It's 4. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We don't want to get murdered.
Yeah, Councilor St. Germain.
I just have a question. So I just was kind of trying to see if there's anywhere that our citizens can look where they can see they're all in, right? Because we're looking at increasing the utility costs, so that's going to be an increase to people's budgets. The increased taxes, the provincial school taxes are increasing, and then the homeland housing. Like, is there anywhere where they can look and see exactly like, at this is what's going to affect me, this is what it's going to do to my budget at each level, so like we're as transparent and they can see how it's affecting them personally, because a lot of people won't equate this.
The easiest way is how Councillor Morrison did it, to be honest. If I was to try, I'd have to calculate every single residence individually, realistically, because of the assessment changes and the fluctuations. It's nearly impossible to try and do that individually. I think the threshold model that Councillor Morrison provided is how I would have done it realistically. So the per $100,000 of assessment is probably the easiest way to forecast what your difference is going to be. So if you have a $400,000 house, based on Councillor Morrison's calculations, because they're not mine, that's $100 per 100,000. I'm just saying, no, give me the credit. It's $400 at $400,000.
This is King Press.
So I guess what I'm asking is, so is that 9.2, that's not including the provincial and the homeland housing?
It
right?
is.
It is, okay.
Oh, so his, no,
That's
my
the
number,
residential
my
only.
number did, his did not.
If I may, I strongly caution against us showing that, because we're not responsible for that. And so what sometimes occurs, and municipalities fight this all the time, is educating that the education, the homeland housing, all of that is not our municipal tax, we're not responsible. When you put it on the bill, then the residents feel that you as council are responsible for all of those costs and those increases. It may provide a service, but it also provides misinformation, and that we have no control over those costs in any way, shape, or form. What we're trying to do is show what we control and we're responsible for increasing. So that's how we do it.
I guess my concern is then our citizens might not see what their all-in cost is to each level, and it may change things, right? And I get, some people don't understand it, we don't get to keep the school tax, we don't keep the homeland housing, but at least they could see how this is affecting their bottom line.
So right, wrong, or whatever we want to call it, indifferent, regardless of what they're charging, we don't want to affect your decisions. So when you say, well, that could affect things, I'm assuming what you're meaning is by looking at the cumulative cost, including education and all those types of things, it might change your decisions as council. I would caution against that, because what we're looking at from here is what we need based on our budget calculations, based on our asset management, our debt management, by clouding the water, for lack of a better way of putting it, by putting in other requisitioning bodies and other levels of government costs and making a decision based on what they're charging. I think it would be difficult and maybe a bit of misinformation, making it difficult to make that decision.
Just remember, we have a motion on the floor as well. Go ahead.
As much as I agree that we definitely need the 9.2 increase, I'm also looking at, we have a lot of seniors on fixed incomes in town, and we actually have a lot of younger families that are also stretched and feeling the pinch of all the other increases in the cost of living and stuff. So as much as I would agree that we need the 9.2, I would probably not go any lower than 7 point, or higher than 7.2, just in my opinion.
There's a motion on the floor for 18.
Yeah, the motion's for 8-2. Any more questions in regards to the motion? Okay,
Your Honor, sorry,
yeah.
nobody really made a motion. All that
Oh.
happened was Councillor Barak just kind of stated that he would be willing to go with that. So no
Oh,
formal motion
yeah,
has been
make
put
the
on the
motion.
floor yet.
He's gonna make the motion now.
Thank you.
Is it possible, does this motion have to be made now, or could we do it, just have more time to review, or no?
Through Mr. Mayor and Council, we do want to approve the budget on the 28th. That requires us to do the work to create the package. So if we don't have the calculations, we cannot finish the final packages for approval on Tuesday.
Okay, Councillor Breck.
I'd like to make a motion that the tax rate increase is at 8.20%.
So just to clarify then, based on the motion that is recommended on the RFD, is that you are directing administration to bring forward a request for decision to approve the operating budget with a tax revenue increase of 8.2%.
Yes, correct.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? So carried 5-2. Okay. There's another one in there, sorry.
It's option 8 or 9. That'd be the third motion.
In the recommendation for action,
Right.
Your Honor,
Yeah, sorry.
there's a third motion required.
Yeah. Can I get a motion in regards Yeah.
Just want to clarify it, sorry, I pasted the wrong motion in there. The recommended motion is to provide direction to bring forward an RFD to approve the budget as currently funded, not with funding adjustments. That would be if council wanted to direct us to change the method of funding in some way. So it should be number 8 should be the recommended action for motion 3.
Anybody? Number 8.
I move that council provides administration with direction to bring forward an RFD to approve the capital budget as currently funded.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So carried, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we need to move on to 4.2, setting a date and time for a public town hall meeting. I saw paperwork in here that had dates, right?
That is correct, Your Honor. So we're just looking for council's direction on setting a public town hall. Once the budget has been passed, the dates provided after checking with our facilities to see what dates were available. May the 4th, May the 7th, May the 11th, and May the 14th. So we're looking for council to pick one of those dates and to also set the time.
Sorry, Chris, can you repeat those dates? I don't.
Yeah. I got it. Yeah, May the 4th, May 7th, May 11th, May 14th, and we all need to,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sorry.
We just received notice that we've actually been requested to present the budget with another municipality on the 7th.
So we'll cross the 7th off?
7th off, please.
Okay.
If it makes it any easier, it's a Monday or a Thursday night minus May the 7th.
7th and the 11th?
Okay. Okay, the 4th be with you then.
Or 14. Don't steal my thunder.
Okay, so can I get a motion setting a date? Can we begin on the 4th? 4th work for everybody?
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor, if I could, assuming that the budget doesn't experience challenges, for example, at the meeting next week, the 4th is ahead of the next available council meeting at that point. So if we wanted to aim for the 14th, that gives administration a bit of time to actually prepare all the documents, get everything together, and be ready to go. So if I could recommend that, that would be the ideal timeline.
So why don't you just give us the one date?
I didn't write this RFD.
So that was what you said, May the 14th? It's like the Thursday before the long weekend, you know that, right?
Okay, actually,
hold on.
Mr. Mayor, you do make a good point. And so one of the things we want is to make sure that as many public can attend, do attend. And so if it's right before a long weekend and it's before a long weekend, we're going to be taking off the lake, which is pretty typical. We want to make sure that maybe we revise the date then, because we want as many people to be there as we can. So I didn't think about a long weekend.
We can't afford gas to go to the lake.
So based on that, Your Honor, so then if we're looking still at Mondays and Thursdays, which is when the cultural center is available. The Monday, the 18th is a long weekend, so obviously not that. So that would be the 21st, the 25th, or the 28th.
We don't want to push it that far out, right? No, of course not, no.
We can't do the 14th.
do the 14th.
It's a Thursday.
Yeah, all right.
They were talking, because it's close to the long weekend.
So I need a motion indicating that 14th and what time, 1900? give people a chance at dinner to get there.
What time is that, Mr. Williams?
That would be 7 o'clock, 7 p.m.
Subtract 12, makes it easy.
I thought she was on.
Okay, so the 14th and 1900? Okay.
Can this change depending on the Dallas Stars?
You'll be fine.
The Oilers won't be playing anymore with the Stars.
Councillor Barrett, you want to make that motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that town hall meeting be at the Cultural Center on May 14th at 7 p.m.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, is that in daylight savings time, Councilor Brown?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. 4 point, oh, we have to vote on it, right?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, sorry. Any further questions on that? Everybody's got the date? Seeing none, all those in favor of May the 14th at 1900 hours? Councilor Brack?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Carried
Carried.
unanimous. 4.3, draft bylaw MOG 2.26, council procedural bylaw.
Well, good evening, council. Your draft council procedural bylaw is in front of you, and I hope that you've all had an opportunity to at least give it a quick little skim over. We're looking for first reading on that tonight, so if council so desires, just to let you know, first reading literally just puts the bylaw on the floor, and we're not looking for 3 readings. It'll give you an opportunity to review it. It'll come back again for second reading at a later date. It would just be that if you had any suggested changes, I would ask that you please forward them on to administration. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Councilor St. Germain.
Thank you. So this would include any recommendations, if there were any, that came up in the legislative compliance review with our.
That is correct.
Thank you. And we would just forward any questions, concerns, proposed changes to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I would, if you have some, share with all of us, that way we're not duplicating. If you're sending something in, you give us an opportunity to ask questions as well.
And just so you know, the administration is mandated when we answer to one councillor, we have to answer to all. So sometimes if you're getting emails and you're like, I didn't even ask this question, now you know why.
Okay.
I'll CC you all.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chris. Just for clarity, the changes that were recommended or required from the compliance review have not yet been incorporated in here, or they have?
They have been incorporated in the new draft bylaw, yes.
Okay, super, thank you.
Councillor Brack.
Do we have anywhere in here on the, do we have anywhere in here on the citizen engagements?
Yes, there is a clause in there that deals with citizen engagement. So you'll have to give me a second to find it. I wrote the bylaw a little while ago.
Yeah, it's
15.3.
14 and 15.
Sections 14 and 15. Yeah, I read that. I saw it in there the other day when I was reading it. And if you look on the agenda package, the updated agenda package as well, it has that information as well. Public, 6 indicating public forum. You okay there? You got it? Yeah. Councilor Morrison?
Just for clarity again, Chris, if we're not in agreement with the length of time or the requirements that are being asked within the area of public engagement, as an example, that's what you're looking to send recommendations or requested changes to, and then we'll get everyone's concurrence. Fine?
Correct. If you're looking for something that's specific and all of council is in agreement on, then yes. we'll incorporate that into the bylaw and bring back a new draft bylaw if you'd like. Remembering that first reading just puts the bylaw on the floor. We can certainly make the changes and bring it back for council's review, prior to having second reading. Typically, we don't see changes happening between second and third, but definitely that can still happen. Like I said, first reading is just going to put the bylaw down on the floor.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion, please? Councillor Longstaff.
I move that we give first reading to bylaw MOG 2-26, the council procedural bylaw.
Any further questions? All those in favor? So carried, unanimous. I believe that is it.
Anything correspondence?
I don't think so. Yeah. Adjourn the meeting, 32 hours.